So picture this. You're just enjoying a normal weekend. Everything is running smooth. Your smart home is fully connected. Work tools are synced. And life is calm until suddenly your Wi-Fi starts acting up. At first, I thought it was just one of those random network glitches, but then it kept dropping. No signal in the living room, no connection in the kitchen, and even the home security feed started buffering. That's when I knew something was seriously off. I checked all the usual stuff, router, cables, devices, and everything looked fine, until I noticed my Wi-Fi booster was gone. Just gone now. Here's where things take a wild turn. I live in a community with an HOA, and while most neighbors are chill, there's always that one person. You know, the type always peeking through the blinds, constantly reporting people for garden gnomes or trash bins being out 10 minutes too long. Let's just say Karen has made herself the unofficial boss of the neighborhood. And guess who was lurking around earlier in the day? Yep, her, but stealing a Wi-Fi booster. That's next level. Entitled. What she didn't know, though, is that I'm not just some average tech user. I'm the actual 911 network coordinator for our region. Yeah, that means I manage the tech systems that emergency services rely on. So, not only did she mess with the wrong person, she might have interfered with critical systems. At this point, it wasn't just about the booster, became a question of safety, legality, and a whole lot of audacity. You won't believe what I discovered when I confronted her. Let's just say Karen had no clue what kind of digital mess she had stepped into. And trust me, what happened next? It left even the HOA board speechless. I decided to backtrack everything that had happened that day. I remembered seeing Karen walking around earlier, carrying a tote bag. Nothing too suspicious at first, but now it clicked. The bag looked oddly bulky, and she had passed by my porch more than once, lingering near the side gate. Still, I didn't want to jump to conclusions without proof. So I pulled up footage from one of my outdoor security cams. And there it was, clear as Karen bending near the corner where the booster had been installed, fiddling with something, then casually slipping it into her bag and walking off like she was picking up lost mail. The audacity. Now here's the twist. My Wi-Fi booster wasn't just a regular plug-and-play gadget. Because of my job as a 911 network coordinator, I'd modified it to work as a private signal bridge for emergency system backups. It's totally legal, approved, and secure. But tampering with it or removing it could mess with the way our local emergency routing system tests connectivity. Not life-threatening, but definitely serious. Still, I kept calm. I knew I couldn't just storm over to her door yelling. That would only escalate things. Instead, I took my time and documented everything. Screenshots, footage, logged outages. I even ran a quick device scan and, no surprise, found a new unauthorized device broadcasting from her end of the street. She had plugged it in. Probably thought it would make her Netflix faster or something. But she clearly had no clue what she'd taken or who she'd messed with. To make things even stranger, the HOA had just sent out a notice last week about unusual signal interference complaints from other residents. Is Karen behind all of that too? Or was someone else involved? I wasn't sure yet, but I was ready to find out. Later that evening, took a walk through the neighborhood, casually stopping to chat with a couple of neighbors I trusted. I didn't bring up the booster right away. Wanted to gauge if anyone else had noticed anything strange. Turns out, several of them had been having internet issues lately too. One guy said his security cameras kept losing connection. And another mentioned that their smart doorbell hadn't worked right all week. Everyone had just assumed it was some random ISP problem, but now it looked like something more organized, or at least more deliberate. And then there was the HOA. A few days back, they'd emailed everyone warning us not to install unauthorized wireless devices on HOA property. It sounded ridiculous at the time. Why would anyone do that? But after seeing Karen walk around with what looked like a portable Wi-Fi extender in her tote bag, things started to click. She wasn't just using my booster, she might have been collecting others too. Maybe she thought they were some kind of free community tech she could rehome or control. It sounded absurd, but this was Karen we're talking about. At the same time, I started digging into the signal data I'd collected over the past week. Something didn't add up. There was another pattern of interference, totally separate from what Karen's setup could cause. It looked like someone else nearby was running a rogue access point, one that mimicked the names of real home networks. I'd seen this sort of thing in cyber drills. It's called an evil twin attack, where a fake Wi-Fi network tricks people into connecting without realizing it. Could Karen have set that up? Didn't seem like Lachey barely knew how to reset her router. So now there was a second player in this mess. The deeper I looked, the more tangled things got. Karen might have kicked this off, but something else was lurking behind the signal noise. And I wasn't about to let it slide. I decided it was time to take things up a notch. The interference was getting worse. And now a few of the emergency test signals I monitor through my backup grid were showing gaps, nothing critical yet, but enough to raise red flags. I couldn't ignore it anymore. Atea set up a real-time scan. Using my professional-grade spectrum analyzer, something way beyond your average Wi-Fi scanner. Within minutes, I had confirmation. There were two strong rogue signals bouncing across our neighborhood, and one of them was mimicking my own network. I followed the signal trail, walking slowly with my analyzer running and pretending to be on a phone call. One of the signals traced directly back to Karen's house. No surprise there, but the second one, that led me 3 doors down to a guy named Greg. He mostly kept to himself, worked from home, and never really mingled at block parties. Most people barely noticed him, but apparently Greg had some tech experience enough to set up a clone network that was quietly intercepting data. And now, with Karen unknowingly boosting his signal using my stolen equipment, he had just about the perfect setup to stay hidden in plain sight. What made it worse? Karen had no clue. She probably thought she was just piggybacking off someone else's faster signal. Maybe thought she'd gotten lucky. She didn't realize she'd become the perfect decoy. And I had no idea how long Greg had been running his little side operation. Weeks? Months? Long enough that the HOA interference reports might have all been tied back to him. The situation had become way bigger than a stolen Wi-Fi booster. It wasn't just about tech anymore. It was about privacy, security, and the potential breach of a system people rely on in actual emergencies. I had to act fast. So that night, I made a plan. One that would put both Karen and Greg exactly where they needed to be without them even realizing it. That night, while the neighborhood settled into its usual quiet, I set everything in motion. I configured a decoy signal same name as my original network, but isolated on a sandbox system with tracking scripts built in. If either Karen or Greg connected to it, I'd be able to trace exactly what devices they were using, and even log basic traffic without accessing anything private. The goal wasn't to spy, was to confirm who was really pulling the strings and using my stolen Wi-Fi booster for more than just Netflix buffering. By midnight, I had movement. 2 devices connected almost simultaneously. One was Karen's. No surprise, probably her phone and tablet. But the other, it was a high-powered laptop with a masked MAC address and a rotating IP setup. Someone was clearly trying to stay hidden. I traced it right back to Greg's garage. But just as I was about to log the final trace, the connection dropped. Clean, no warning. It was like someone yanked the cord. Seconds later, got a knock on my door. I wasn't expecting anyone, especially not at this hour. I looked through the peephole and it was Karen. She was standing there in a bathrobe, holding the Wi-Fi booster in her hands like a peace offering. But her face, pale, anxious, almost scared. Before I could say anything, she blurted out, "I think someone's been in my house." That stopped me cold. I opened the door, and she started explaining, panicked and stammering. She had noticed unfamiliar files popping up on her laptop, strange tabs opening by themselves, and her smart TV flashing screens in the middle of the night. She thought it was just glitches until tonight, when her devices all froze and then rebooted together. Karen wasn't just a nosy neighbor anymore. She had unknowingly become part of something way beyond her. And now, it looked like Greg wasn't just some reclusive tech guy. He might have been inside her network the whole time. Or worse, inside her home. I invited Karen inside, mostly because I could see she was genuinely shaken. She handed me the Wi-Fi booster like it was something cursed. I plugged it in not to restore the signal, but to extract the device logs. What I found made my stomach drop. The booster had been modified. Not by me, but after it was stolen. Someone had added a secondary firmware layer, one designed to capture packets, track local devices, and reroute certain traffic. It was a full-blown surveillance setup, and whoever had done it knew exactly what they were doing. I told Karen to stay inside and lock her doors. Then I contacted a friend of mine from a cybersecurity task force. He owed me a favor. We set up a silent flag trace using my decoy network and launched a quiet signal spike to force any rogue devices to ping back. It worked. Greg's house lit up like a Christmas tree. Not just his garage, his entire property was running off layered networks and hidden SSIDs. It was clear now Greg wasn't just tapping neighbors' Wi-Fi. He was mapping their devices, monitoring habits, and possibly collecting data. This wasn't just nosy behavior, was criminal. By the time the authorities arrived the next morning, Greg was already gone. Vanished. No car in the driveway, no response to knocks, no cameras active on his end. But inside his garage, they found a whole setup, routers, laptops, antennas, everything stripped of labels but left behind in a rush. The twist? One of the laptops had a document open on the screen, a draft email. To me, it read, "You were never supposed to notice, but now that you have, watch your network." That was it. No signature, no name. Just those words. The good news. Karen's devices were wiped clean, and the booster was restored to normal. The HOA. They issued a neighborhood alert and quietly updated security policies. But I still don't leave my signal unchecked. Because while Greg may be gone, someone else could be listening. After the dust settled, I took a step back and reevaluated everything. I updated all my security systems, changed every password, and set up layered encryption on every device. Even though Greg was gone, the idea that someone had been quietly watching through a network I built was enough to shake me. Karen, surprisingly, became a different person after all this. She apologized genuinely, said she never meant to cause any harm, and admitted she had no idea what she was messing with. Honestly, I believed her. She even joined the next HOA meeting. Not to complain, but to help others understand basic tech security. The HOA board took action too. They launched a new initiative to educate the neighborhood about Wi-Fi safety, smart home setups, and what red flags to look for. It wasn't just about protecting networks, it was about protecting people. One neighbor even found a spoofed smart thermostat in their home that they'd never installed themselves. Greg's reach had clearly gone further than we thought. The weird part? No one ever saw Greg again. His house went up for sale a month later, cash buyer, no questions asked. The cops never confirmed if they tracked him down or if he just slipped through the cracks. That email he left behind still sticks with me though. Watch your network. A warning, a threat, or maybe just a twisted goodbye. In the end, this whole thing started with a stolen Wi-Fi booster and ended with a wake-up call for an entire neighborhood. It taught me that even the smallest digital footprint can lead to something much bigger. And while I may be the 911 network coordinator by title, it's reminded me that being alert, being aware's something everyone needs to practice. Because sometimes the real danger isn't offline. It's already logged in.